Welcome to A Life of Simple Joy. I'm Jean Ann Duckworth, and this week I want to help you take the stress out of entertaining. Are you ready? Let's go. On Monday, I was talking to you about relationships and the power relationships, specifically friendships, have on women. How it just helps us strengthen our self-identity and makes us feel better about ourselves. In addition to that, I was alluding to the fact that entertaining, getting together with friends, is one of the ways to strengthen those relationships. I mean, after all, who doesn't love a party? Well, sometimes it's the hostess. We love attending parties, but we don't necessarily like hosting them, throwing parties, because it is just so much work. I wanted to talk about this week because the holidays are quickly approaching. In fact, next week on this program, I'm going to start my series on Thanksgiving. I always do it early so that you can begin preparing. It gives you an opportunity to get ahead of the game. So, parties. I like parties, and I like hosting parties. I think I like hosting them because I learned certain techniques many years ago, and I've kind of stuck with it. When we were first married, my husband was a radio announcer, and the understanding, the kind of unwritten, I hate calling it a rule, but the agreement among the people on the air was that this was a college town, and the agreement was that you either took Thanksgiving or Christmas off. If you took Thanksgiving off, the people who stayed behind helped cover your shifts if you were an air personality. My husband always took Christmas off. He was away from home. The station was in the southern part of Illinois. He lived just south of Chicago. His parents did, at least. So he'd go to his parents' place for Christmas. Before we met, there was many a Thanksgiving where he ate, I always want to cry when I say this, he would eat turkey TV dinners. And he'd be alone. He even told me a story because of the apartment he lived in when we met, the one we lived in when we were first married. The walls were kind of thin, college town, you know. And the guys who lived next door who worked at a different radio station had people over. And he could hear them laughing and eating and enjoying themselves, and he was alone. I wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case for other people at the radio station, so we began hosting Thanksgiving dinner. People would sign up for it. They would sign up to donate things. He seemed to think they should have to cook it, but I knew that not everybody had the place or the ability to cook. So I'd tell them how many potatoes I needed and how many cans of green beans and so on. All right, here's the point. First year we did this, I made it such an elaborate dinner. I had like 3 different vegetables and a couple of salads and a couple of different desserts. And then it was all these guys who showed up. And that year I learned that they care about lots of turkey, lots of mashed potatoes, lots of dressing, pumpkin pie, green beans. They're happy. We're done. So the next year I made 2 turkeys and about 10 pounds of mashed potatoes and a dozen cans of green beans and so on, and kept it very simple. Everyone had a great time. It made it a lot easier on me. Oh, don't swallow and breathe at the same time. That's kind of hard. A lot easier on me because I didn't have to cook as much. And I learned a lesson then. you do have to keep it simple. And I was often running when it came to entertaining. Parties don't have to be difficult. We make ourselves insane. The basis for this series today and then Friday's episode is actually a story out of the Bible, which has theological ramifications, but also has real-world ramifications. It's the story of two sisters named Martha and Mary, Martha being the older. And when Jesus and the disciples, which always sounds like a music group to me, when Jesus and the disciples were traveling back to Jerusalem, they had to go through or near the town where Martha and Mary lived. So they stopped by, and Martha was fixing them dinner. Martha's in the kitchen slaving away, fixing dinner for all these men, while her sister Mary sat in the living room, being the hostess of the century, I guess, basically listening to everything Jesus had to say, which I understand. But for the sake of this discussion, it's just sitting there chanting up the guest. Martha eventually becomes really ticked and comes out and says to Jesus the fact that, their guest of honor, will you tell my sister to get off her lazy butt and get in the kitchen and help me? That's where I'm going to stop, because I've already talked about in my Saturday Bible study the theological side of this. So let's just look at it from the practical side. Historically, Martha was doing what she was supposed to be doing. Women belonged in the kitchen. Mary was breaking all the rules because the women did not belong in the living room with the men. She should not have been socializing with the men. She probably should not even have been talking to the men because they were not members of her family. I always liked this story because this was my thought, that when it comes to entertaining, we should prep like Martha and then party like Mary. That when it came to a party, both sisters were right. That you needed to do the work so that people had food to eat and things were prepared that way. The logistics of things went smoothly, but you can't neglect your guests. You need to be able to socialize with them and make sure everybody's having a good time. So you have to take a little bit from both of them. And that was when I began entertaining that way. Setting things up in such a way so that when my guest arrived, yes, you still have to do things in the kitchen and take care of some things, but that I could attend the party as well. So how do you do that? Today I want to talk about Martha and her side of things. And then on Friday, I'm going to talk about Mary, which really doesn't take that much. And in addition, I had told you when I did the 3 rules of simple joy, make it simple, sweetie, ask for help, and take care of yourself, that they applied to all sorts of situations, including when you're entertaining. For example, when the family's coming over for Thanksgiving. I'm going to try to do that on Friday. I don't have to do it as a full-blown because you already have heard the 3 rules. I just want you to be able to see how this works. So, how do you prep like Martha? Many years ago, my daughter Katie and I were in a small gift shop looking around at things, and I came upon a sampler that said, and it was a long time ago, first time I'd ever seen this, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Well, sometimes you see something in passing and it just kind of sticks with you, and that's the way this was. It really stuck with me, and not in a good way. I really incredibly disliked this sentiment. I felt it was grossly unfair. Why in the world was I responsible for the emotional outlook my family had, their emotional well-being, why they had to be responsible for being happy. It shouldn't be my responsibility to always be cheerful so that I don't infect them. I know that wasn't what it was implying. It was implying you need to make sure mama stays happy. But it ate at me. And then after a while, it dawned on me that the sampler was right. In our family, when my husband was upset, well, the child would just go into a room and stay away from him until he cooled off. When I was upset, not only Katie, but my husband did everything they could to make me happy because my unhappiness affected them. Whether we like it or not, we are the emotional barometers of our family. When we are unhappy, more importantly, when we're stressed, our stress affects everyone in the family. This applies to parties as well. I have attended parties where the hostess was just frazzled and completely stressed out, and no one could relax and enjoy themselves. No one could. Period. For that reason, rule number 1, when it comes to the simple joy of entertaining, is attend your own party. Now, I know some of you are going, yeah, of course I'm going to be there. No, I mean, you have to be there physically, mentally, spiritually. All of you has to be at that party. You've got to be in the room. You can't be physically in the room and the whole time worried about the fact that you're not in the kitchen checking on the roast, or that you're worried that your pie's not going to be good enough, or that whoever, it doesn't matter. You have to be the number one guest at your party. You have to really enjoy yourself, because if you are not, no one else is going to enjoy themselves. That being said, I have 4 things you can do to help you prep like Martha and enable you to enjoy the party, to attend your own party, so that when the doorbell rings, you're ready to become Mary. Put Martha aside, it's Mary time. So number 1, you want to make your list, and that's list with an S on the end. You will get so tired of hearing me say this, especially as the holidays come, because I am an absolute fanatic about list. You have to work smarter, not harder. You have to sit down and make out lists before you do absolutely anything else. That's all there is to it. The first list you have to make, believe it or not, is your guest list. Now, let me explain this. Here's the way so many people, I'll say women, because I'm talking about in 2 women, here's the way we often plan parties, and I will use Thanksgiving since it's the one coming. And if I do this again later talking about Thanksgiving, I apologize. So you're sitting down getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner, to start planning Thanksgiving dinner. And what we usually do, the first thing we do is we start planning the event. You usually already know what kind of party, what kind of event it's going to be. It's, Thanksgiving, it's a birthday party, it's a tea, something like that. But you begin planning the event. So you sit down and you work out this beautiful sit-down dinner with china and silver and crystal and linen and something out of a Martha Stewart special. and it's absolutely wonderful. And the guests around your table are having a marvelous time. And you work out your menu and you work out how you're going to plan everything and how it's all going to work. And when you're all done spending days doing that, you sit down and you plan your guest list and you realize that you need to have 12 people over and your table only holds 6. Now you have a problem. You always begin with the people. If you want to begin with the event, then perhaps you need to become an event planner or party coordinator or something like that. Entertaining is about people. And you might think, well, yeah, duh, of course it is. Well, yeah, duh, when everybody starts with the event and then they get in over their heads. It's about the people. It's about having people over and socializing with them and laughing and sharing stories and having a good time. And from there, everything else is just secondary, which is one of the points Jesus makes in the story with Mary and Martha. The people won't remember a year from now what it is you had to eat unless something went really bad. You know, yeah, they burned the roast and we ended up eating hot dogs. It was great. But they will remember the people who were there and the good time they had with them. So the first list you make is your guest list. If you have to make a few phone calls to kind of check or text people and check and see to get a rough idea, but it'll give you a rough idea how many people are going to be there. And then you can plan what type of event. Now, what do I mean by what type of event? Well, like I said, if you have to have 15 people over and your table doesn't seat that many and you can't add tables because the room's not big enough, then you're having a buffet. And it makes it a whole lot easier. Now, let me take a little side trip here. If you do something like that, if your family has always done a sit-down dinner, but you're having more people because you've got a few friends that are from out of town and they have no one in town and you invite them over, so everybody won't fit at the table, so you're doing a buffet, and somebody in the family has the nerve to complain about it. Well, you know, Grandma always had us at a sit-down dinner and it was just lovely. Then you look at them and say, that's great. I guess we can count on you hosting next year, right? And when the hem and haw and sputter, you very politely say, I didn't think so. This is what works for me. Either you host it or relax and enjoy yourself. There's another way you can do it I'll tell you about later, but we'll go with this. So, all right, your guest list. Next, you need to plan your menu, and once you plan your menu, you start making out a grocery list. Look around, see what you've got. If it's Thanksgiving and you really don't cook certain things, on your list, don't forget to check your spices. If they're a year old, toss them, you need new. Do a quick inventory and make your grocery list. Break your grocery list down by store. There are certain things, what I get at Trader Joe's is different from what I get at Costco, and what I get at Costco is different from what I get at Total Wine. There are just different places where I get different things. And I break my grocery list down. I have a master list, and then I have and for the record, before you say, wow, you're really well organized. Wow, I really am not, and it's why I need all these lists. All right. So you have your guest list, you have your menu, you have your grocery list. Now you need a list of what it is you need. What does that mean? Well, I did a Christmas tea that I wanted to be very nice and somewhat formal, although I don't do high tea. It was just a nicer tea. I do not have a good set of china. So my friend Kim loaned me her china and the tablecloth she uses with it so that I could do a Winter Wonderland tea. It was white and silver with a few blue accents. It was really nice. So, do you need to borrow china? Do you need slow cookers or an air fryer or a hot pot? Do you need folding tables. Maybe you want to do a buffet, but you don't have a table long enough to do it. So do you need linen? Don't buy these things. Start asking around and see what you can borrow from people. Just make sure you keep track of what belongs to whom. Do you need chairs? And there are all kinds of places where you can get things. People were always coming to my church and borrowing, members of my church. They'd be having, celebrating a birthday or something, and they'd stop by the church and pick up 2-3 folding tables and chairs to be able to do this thing. There's all sorts of things. Don't buy unless you absolutely have to, unless you know it's something that you're going to use again. Now it's time to get a really nice big tablecloth, so I'm going to get one. All right. Then you need your to-do list, so you remember everything that has to be done. And you can break things down so that it makes it a lot easier to see what's what, just like you do your grocery list. All right, so make your lists. 2, make some decisions. You need to decide if it's Thanksgiving and there are certain traditions in your family, they may not all work for you. For a variety of reasons. I worked in retail. When we were doing the big Thanksgiving dinners, I had to learn ways to cut back because I had to get up and go into work the next day, early, very, very early. I used to do my church would host this big Thanksgiving dinner the Friday before Thanksgiving. I was the one who took it over and kind of organized things. There were certain things that I did to make it a lot easier. I had to make a decision what I wanted to keep the way they always did it and what I wanted to change. For example, people would stand there forever chopping up the celery and onions for the dressing. Some of you may just cringe, but I brought my food processor in and had it done in half an hour. It wasn't quite the same, but it tasted great and nobody ever complained about it. There are all kinds of decisions you can make as far as what you're willing to keep and what you want to change. Decisions like what are you willing to pay for? What is more valuable, time or money? If you really aren't a great cook or your oven's not really big, you might want to order a pre-roasted turkey. I love to cook. I love to bake. There is a zen to making pastry, like pie or rolls. I do not have the touch. I've tried making pie crust. I'm telling you, I could hang wallpaper with it. It's just terrible. I could repave the driveway with it. It does not work well. So I buy pies. I don't even like buying the frozen ones that I bake because, like pumpkin pie is kind of tricky because it's liquidy in the middle when it's actually done. But it can't be too liquidy, and so either it's too much or not. It's a pain. So, are you wanting to, make a decision as to who you want to have help you? You can have people come over and help you get things set up. You can ask somebody to come over and help you in the kitchen. There are all kinds of help out there that you can ask for, but remember you have to ask, and I'll talk about this more on Friday. Number 3, what can you make ahead? When we did that big Thanksgiving dinner, I would get there at 9 o'clock on Friday morning, and the potatoes we served, we'd mash them, and then we'd mix them with cream and I think sour cream and cream cheese. It seems like sour cream. And some other ingredients, and then put them in big pans. They'd go in the refrigerator, and we'd bake them later. So we had those made ahead. I would make the dressing ahead. They made the pies and the salad the day before. What can you, pardon me, what can you make ahead? When we did the big Thanksgiving dinner, I always had 2 turkeys. I always made one of them the day before. But I always roasted another turkey on Thanksgiving so the house smelled like roasted turkey because everybody likes that. Decide whether or not you want to stuff your turkey. I always used to. I do not anymore. I think it's a lot quicker roasting a turkey that is unstuffed. But these are decisions you have to make. What can you eliminate that causes you stress, and yet your family will still feel like it's a Smith family traditional Thanksgiving? Then number 4, make a call. You need to sit down and make a few phone calls. You made a list of who you would like to have help you. Start calling them. And I'm going to tell you the most important call or text you're going to make. I always invite a close friend to come over at least half an hour, 45 minutes before everyone else. I make sure I'm completely ready. Once I get everything in the oven where stuff's just simmering, I go ahead and I take my shower, do my hair, put on my makeup, do everything. Maybe I don't get dressed. Maybe I get everything on and put on my robe. But then all I have to do is put on my dress or my nice clothes. Half hour, 45 minutes. Have somebody come over. They can keep you company in the kitchen. They can keep an eye on stuff while you're doing a couple last-minute things. More importantly, they can answer the door if you're right in the middle of, say, mashing the potatoes or doing something that is time-sensitive. The most important thing about that is this. It's always a little stressful waiting for that first guest to show up. If you prearrange that first guest coming early, then it takes all that stress off you. And you're not rushing around like a maniac at the last minute trying to get done. You have somebody else who can be Mary for a little while until you can put aside Martha and come out and join the party. So prepping like Martha isn't really that hard. It just takes planning and thinking ahead. That's all the time I have for today. Be sure to join me again on Friday when I'm going to tell you how to party like Mary so that you can be the number 1 guest at that party. And I'm going to show you how the 3 rules of simple joy apply when you're entertaining. Until then, I'm Jean Ann Duckworth, wishing you a life filled with simple joy. You have a fabulous day.